Get on the bus, that's their ticket. We'll be fine. We'll just all good.
That's how we became counselors. My last, yeah, I have surveys come in. The last one was just a visit. Okay, good.
Good here.
You had a good memo? Oh, you didn't know there was a list.
Yes, yeah, I didn't know that, but now I know.
Committed.
Such bull, right?
We did it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And we did something on ourselves.
Now I know.
Okay,
Okay, here we go.
what time is it?
About, yes, we got about 2 minutes.
Is there a volume to this?
Oh,
Volume.
someone's ID is there.
I know, it's like an agenda, I guess, or maybe
No, I think it just fell. Chemistry teacher. Next time.
She's been here like 2 years. She's a nice baby. She's a chemistry
I thought
teacher.
you had left already. I was thinking you had. Oh, here, I'll let you sit here.
Would you like some cookies? These are not, they're not high in calorie. Guess why I got them? Because I'm in such a diet and I had all this kind of things. With my Diet Coke, you know?
How are you doing? I just about to say.
Yes. My piece of pumpkin pie. Remember that big thing that the cow brought you?
No, she bought it at. They're saying
It used to be at a co-op, but all that is already
kids
like,
are
it was
saying they
taken
want to
down.
continue it.
It used to be in a co-op. Where did I go to? I went to a road meeting, to Christmas funeral.
And the sellers were saying this.
When she went to Nancy's building.
Few weeks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone in the ESC Region 20 Cottonwood room from San Antonio Independent School District. Good morning to the folks at Harlandale Independent School District.
Morning.
I see you guys. Good morning to the folks at Northside Independent School District. Are you all with us? Denise, are you all at Northside?
Northside, we're here.
Okay, great. Welcome. It's great to be back with you guys. I was in the Valley last time. I know that my colleagues from the Office of P20 Initiatives at UTSA were with you. If I haven't met you before, my name is Belinda Saldana, and I am Director of Community Outreach at UTSA. And again, I'm really pleased to be with you. I want to remind you that as we are getting started, if you would, I know that you all have the evaluations in your area. If you would go ahead and answer question 1 on the evaluation before we get started to the best of your ability, and then we will continue the program, and then at the end of the program we will complete the evaluations. This morning our topic is going to be, the big part of the topic is going to be about paying for college. We're going to be talking about paying for college for both students that will be filling out the FAFSA, and also for students that may fill out the TASFA, or we call HB 1403 students, or undocumented students. So we do have some experts from both UTSA and St. Philip's, the Alamo colleges, with us this morning. I also want to let you know that you may have received some information, and if you haven't, you will be soon, that we will be having another session added to our schedule for the C Squared for Life. C Squared meaning College and Career Readiness for Life. What we found after last month's session is that where we talked about both the STAAR and we also talked about the importance of testing, that the evaluation that you all filled out, and thank you so much for being very thorough and very honest on your evaluations, we found that there was quite a few more questions on STAAR than we were able to answer. I know that Jeff Goldhorn went through his presentation very quickly to make room for the other presenter, but we know that there are still some questions out there, even though you all have already received some great information. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another session, another STAAR session, but we're also going to open up that session to Regions 1 and Regions 2, because if Region 20 is having questions, we're very likely going to have questions across South Texas. So since we have this wonderful technology that we can use, why not bring in more folks that are helping students get to college? So we'll be doing that, and that'll be happening February 2nd. You will be receiving information on that. Also want to remind you that at the end of this session, we'll also be giving out some information on something that Café College is going to be taking the lead on along with other partners around Texas, and that is many financial aid presentations will begin January 8th. If you haven't heard about that yet, we're going to give you those dates today. We're also going to make them available on our website, and then you'll be getting more information later. Also want to remind you that the purpose of this presentation, we know you're getting financial aid a little earlier and touching on the admissions process, but you guys are the professionals that are going to be working with students and parents in January, end of December, as students have many questions about financial aid. So we don't want to wait until December or January to talk to you about it. We want to give you information on the front end. Please also be reminded that December 3rd at the UTSA downtown campus, we're going to be having a session for parents and students. The Nippy Bet series, Empowerment 21, UTSA Office of P20 will have a session on paying for college that is open to parents and students. Again, it's Saturday, December 3rd, and I believe you all are receiving flyers on that, and it's going to be at the downtown campus from 9 to 10:30. So again, that information is on our website as well. And I know that some of the counselors have actually been coming to the sessions themselves, and Nippy Beth is a really great presenter. So I want to go ahead and start with our speakers this morning, and want to tell you who our speakers are. Our first speaker is with UTSA. His name is Alfredo Moncada, and he does a lot of our outreach across South Texas. And if you haven't seen him at the UTSA campus, you may have seen him in Carrizo Springs or the Valley, perhaps, or Brackettville. He's all over Texas, actually. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him up, and I'm going to move out a little bit of the way, but I'm going to go ahead and bring up his session, and you can go ahead and speak to the folks over at Northside and Harlandale. And we'll bring up your session, your presentation.
Good morning. Like she said, my name is Alfredo Moncada. I've been with UTSA for about 13 years now. I've been doing financial aid for that long, and so I'm here to present the basics on the way that financial aid works and what it's composed of and how you go about applying and what you may or may not qualify for. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first slide says, why complete an application for aid? Well, you want to complete the FAFSA application because anybody who is an American citizen or an eligible non-citizen qualifies for some type of financial aid. And if you don't take the time to apply for it, you might not know what you may be missing out on. So by filling out the FAFSA, you can go ahead and see what your eligibility for as far as federal, state, and institutional aid is determined. For undocumented students, there is a separate application, which is called the FAFSA. which is a Texas application for state financial aid. And my colleagues from St. Philip's will touch upon that a bit more. There will be some slides on this topic, but I will skip through them so that they can talk more in depth about it. So when can you apply for the FAFSA? The FAFSA, you can apply for it every New Year's Day. Every New Year's Day, the federal government posts the following 8-year FAFSA. So this coming January 1st of 2012, that day will be posted the 2012-2013 academic 8-year FAFSA. So for anybody in Harlandale or Northside who are senior students, that is when you want to go ahead and start the application process for financial aid for your first college semester in the fall. Do you have to have your file? Do you have to have your tax return filed during that day? This is where it gets a little bit. It's a little bit different. At UTSA, we will allow for you to do estimated figures based on the previous tax year information, because really, realistically, nobody has their W-2s for that year that just finished on New Year's Day. Usually people get their W-2s at the earliest towards the end of January. But we want you to get in line. So at UTSA, we will allow for you to use your estimated tax returns, figures from the previous year. When it comes time to answering the question that it asks you, have you filed your tax return for 2011? You will put that I will file. That way, we take it that you, by the time April 15th comes around, you will have gone back to the FAFSA website and corrected figures by saying, I have filed and here are my correct figures. That way we get you in line. We get you in line early in January because we do award on a first come, first served basis at UTSA. Not all colleges do this though. I believe Alamo colleges, you have to have the correct tax returns. So it depends on the school. So whether it be UTSA, Alamo colleges, any other school, it is important for you to find out what type of figures they will accept, whether they're estimated figures or they're the correct ones that you have submitted to the federal government. Okay? Who is eligible for the TASFA? Like I said, my colleagues will talk a little bit more, but basically it's for people who are not citizens and that are undocumented, and they will follow up more on that. Okay, this is very important. For all high school students right now, and anybody in this room in general, at the very least, if you're planning to go to college starting next fall, the very least you can do is do your PIN today. You can do your PIN at any time. The PIN is going to be a 4-digit code that you will get from the federal government when you go to the PIN website, which is pin.ed.gov, as you can see on the presentation. You will need a PIN for yourself, and if you're under the age of 24, you will need one for your parent as well, for at least one parent. You go to the website there, you provide your name, first name, last name, social security number, and to get your PIN number. You can select your own 4-digit PIN. It's just a matter of you making sure that you select a number that's going to be easy for you to remember, because that is going to be the same number you will use.
Is there a question?
Yeah, we can't see the PowerPoint at Harlandale.
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
Okay, sorry.
Let me go back here.
Do 5. Okay, here's the beginning.
I'm so sorry about that. I know the folks here at Region 20 are the experts, so. And again, let me remind you that this is also going to be available on our website. Yeah, we can move this.
Okay.
And we're going to just review this. As Alfredo mentioned, the folks over at St. Philip's are going to go over the TASFA and the procedure that they will be following for students that do not have a social security number. And Alfredo, you mentioned the PIN number earlier, and I know that many folks have been doing college and career readiness for a while, but for those that are new, I wanted to remind you, and that the parents will need their own, but each child will also need their own PIN number as well, right?
Correct. Anybody who's applying for the FAFSA, each individual needs their own individual PIN. But like I said, we're going to touch upon what makes you either an independent student or a dependent student in a slide that's going to be coming up, because depending on whether you're of a certain age of 24 or older, or other circumstances which I will touch upon, will determine whether or not you need a PIN for your parent as well. Because there comes a time when you do not need a PIN. But initially, mostly for all high school graduating seniors, they're mostly all going to need a PIN number for their parents as well.
Now, Alfredo, I know that St. Philip's is going to be touching on the TASFA and the procedure that they have. But can you touch very briefly on how UTSA will handle students that do not have a social security number?
We will ask for you to go to the TASFA.org website where you will see the TASFA application itself. And on that website, it'll instruct you on what documentation you need to attach to that application, such as if you're an undocumented student who just graduated, you would need to turn in copies of your final high school transcript along with that, some kind of utility bills to show that you're actually residing here in Texas, as well as your ID and other documents. Like I said, my colleagues at Alamo College handle it a little bit different, but like I mentioned before, it's very important for you to go to whichever school you're interested in and find out exactly what those requirements are. I have a question. Yes, miss?
Yes, we had mixed messages last year about the TASPA. Some universities were asking for original copies, others were asking for just copies of the original one. Do you know if that's consistent or?
Of the application itself,
The
ma'am?
application itself, yes.
Mostly we would prefer your original one because that has your original signatures and everything else on there.
So then these students would have to continue to do an original one every time they apply to a different university?
Yes, ma'am, because, well, yes, and not only to each university, but for each academic year, because each student has to also fill out a new FAFSA every year so the same applies for the TASFA.
I'm talking about the seniors, let's say they're applying to 6 different universities.
Yes, ma'am.
We were being asked for an original every single time instead of copies. Is that?
Yes, ma'am, because
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you all at Harlandale and Northside hear the question?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Great.
Yes, ma'am, because like we wouldn't want to take a copy that was provided to Alamo College because we would need that original signature. The same way, vice versa, they would want their own copies of the original. So yes, it is neat. Here's the thing: copies of all the supporting documentation is fine. It's the application itself that has to have the original, the original signature on it.
I just want to make sure.
Yes, miss.
Well, could they just copy like the actual application, but just not each one?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, as long as it's the original signature, that's fine as well as you. Yeah, see, that's a way to make it easier. Copy everything else, leave that last part where they have to sign to make it its own original signature. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, go ahead and keep going. Here are the requirements. Do we have the? Okay. Here are the requirements that you need to fill out a FAFSA. Your legal name and dates of birth. You'd be surprised how many times this simple requirement can mess up a FAFSA. We've received, when I was with the IT section of our department, I would bring in files, electronic files, and a lot of these FAFSAs get rejected because the student will put the last name where the first name goes and the first name and the last name. And that can cause a mismatch with the Social Security Administration because that's how the SSNs are verified. So that creates what's called the rejected FAFSA. And that can hold up your financial aid from getting awarded and posted. So it's very important that you take the time to make sure you read everything correctly as you're filling this out because such a simple mistake can really cause you a lot of headaches later on. Obviously, your Social Security number is another issue that we have sometimes where people are typing it in and they type it so fast that they typo. They have like one number, 2 numbers off or something like that. That can also cause a reject as well. The same with your alien registration number. If you have an A number, that'll be the same thing. Make sure you do all the numbers for the text, your driver's license, your registration numbers, everything. Take the time to make sure that you review it before you submit that application. You will need, as I mentioned, 1040s for the 2011 year for yourself and for your parents, as well as any W-2s for the year 2011 because you will need information off those W-2s as well to put into the FAFSA. Each field in the FAFSA will tell you exactly what number you need to pull that figure from your tax return based on what form you filled out, whether you did the 1040EZ, the 1040A, or the regular 1040 long form. It tells you on there exactly where to pull the number, so you shouldn't have a problem finding that information to post on your application. Anything that's untaxed income, that might be something like if you're receiving child support, anything of that nature, that would also have to be reported on there. Lastly, there's a new IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA website that's been used since this year.
And I'm going to interrupt you for just a second because this is brand new and you all really need to listen to this part. I just learned about this brand new piece that has been added to the financial aid process that is really going to, I think, affect a lot of students. So I just wanted to highlight that before you speak about this new.
No problem. The tool itself right now, it's being used as a more of a convenience thing. That way it can transfer. If you the way that it works is that you get to the part where you have to start filling out your tax information on there, and it asks you, do you want to use the IRS data retrieval tool? If you say yes, it actually moves you to the IRS website, and there's where you fill out all the information. You have to be able to type everything in exactly in the same order that you submitted your 1040. Exactly the same way, because if not, it's not going to find a match and it's not going to move over that information. As I said, for right now, that's more of a convenience thing. I think coming in the 12-13 year, it's going to be mandatory because we're going to be moving away from doing as many verification files, and that's kind of like an audit. That would be, in the IRS terms, where we actually ask you to bring in tax returns and we compare it to what you fill out on the FAFSA. That's going to be mandatory in a couple of years because that way, people who may make a mistake or another when filling out the FAFSA and it doesn't match, this way everything is brought in, everything is moved over correctly. So keep in mind that that's going to be mandatory in a couple of years.
I was going to just mention before your question. So as I understand it, Alfredo, when they push this button before they hit submit, it kind of brings up an IRS transcript, if you would say, like a.
It moves it over. What it does, it migrates all your. If you do it correctly, if you enter the information exactly as you did in your 1040, it moves all your tax figures over to the FAFSA application and puts them in place where they're supposed to be.
Because before, what would happen is some students were selected for verification and then they had to submit their IRS information.
Yes, ma'am.
But now, this is coming over automatically.
And those who get selected for verification in the future, as of right now, we take copies of your 1040 tax return along with the verification form that each school uses. In the future, that's going to be it's going to be mandatory that along with their verification form, that they bring in an actual copy of their IRS transcript.
So does this mean that students and parents will have to not just fill out the income tax form now before they apply for financial aid, but actually file it?
For now, that's, like I said, for now, we at UTSA will let you use estimated figures, and then you will then later on go and correct those figures with the actual information. But when it comes time to do a verification, you will need to bring in that IRS transcript in the future, because that right now we could take a 1040 that's basically handwritten, and we take your word for it that that's correct. But we're getting to a point where we need to be as accurate as possible with the information that you're providing the IRS. So the best way to do this is to get the actual transcript directly from the IRS to attach to the verification form, so we know that everything is legitimate.
Okay, and we do have some questions, so let's open it up to the questions.
Yes, sir.
Hi. So I was talking to other universities, and they say that if you do not transfer for this coming FAFSA cycle, that you'll get automatically verified. And now they're saying that they won't give financial aid packages until verification is complete. Is that also true for UTSA?
What happens with us? That's like a two-part question there. Okay, we will award you, and we will post the award on your award screen. If you go to our banner system and you look at yourself, John Smith has this award. But then you go over and you look at the documentation that's required. If he did get selected for verification, then that means that his award is posted, but none of that money moves over to be payable towards any tuition fees or anything else until that verification is complete. So yes, you can get awarded, but that doesn't mean that that money is going to go right to you until that verification is completed. Now here's the second part to that question. I'm not sure how Alamo Colleges does it, but are you guys verification all across the board? Okay, see, we are not. We are a QAP school, Quality Assurance Program school, which means that we have a little bit different regulations under the federal government. So we do it a little bit different. For instance, the student can receive their student aid report saying you've been selected for verification by the federal government. We get their file at UTSA, and then we award them. Based on I criteria, we may or may not select them for verification. Just because the government selected them doesn't mean that they fit under I criteria, so we may not select them. That can also go to a street where they didn't get selected by the government, but when our file got to UTSA, they met our QAP criteria, and that means that we selected them. So it's a little bit different for us as it is for them. So it just depends. You really need to work with the individual school to find out what their process is. Okay? Anybody else?
Any other questions at Northside or Harlandale before we move on? Okay. Then we will go back to the PowerPoint.
Okay, more required documentation. Knowledge of federal benefits received, such as supplementary security, temporary assistance to needy families and welfare. This kind of stuff that falls under the untaxed income. Also, you need to provide check what information you have, like how much is on your checking account, savings account, anything that you pay out as far as like maybe child support paid, that counts for you. Any investments you have, stocks, bonds, or other investment records. Business, farm, and real estate records that you may own, not the actual home you live in, but say you have property that you rent out, things of that nature. You have to make sure you account for that. So what is the business and farm worth? What exactly has to be reported? Well, if the parent or student owns a business that employs over 100 employees, they must report all the assets. If not, nothing is needed to be reported. Secondly, if the parent or student owns a farm and does not live on it, they must report all assets and land value. If the family owns the farm and lives on it, it's their primary residence, they do not have to report these values. For cash and savings, a student should report what is in their checking savings account after all bills are paid each month. Okay? And what is the EFC? The EFC is the expected family contribution number that you get by filling out the FAFSA. That means that the federal government uses a methodology process where they figure out how much you can contribute towards your own education between you and your parents. And that number is determined by a few things. First of all, how many, whether the student is a dependent or independent status. Secondly, their income and assets. Third, their household size. Fourth, how many in that size actually attend college. And fifth, the age of the oldest parent. And lastly, any special circumstances or professional judgment. And that last part right there, special circumstances, that is actually up to the individual institution. Say, for instance, lately with the economy, a lot of parents are losing their jobs. They're not making as much as everything. So even though, say, for instance, the 2011 year, they're going to have a pretty good income, that might not be the case for 2012. So it's up to the student to follow up with the school that they're going to attend to find out whether or not they are eligible to apply for special circumstances because maybe of a loss of income, a loss of job, anything of that nature. Because what's actually being reported on the FAFSA is not going to actually be true for the 2012 year. They might not have that same income. Some circumstances like that, the student really needs to follow up with the school to see if there's anything that can be done about that.
Yeah, I want to highlight that for just a moment, Alfredo, because a lot of folks, have been losing their job and financial situations have changed. And so they're going to go ahead and fill out the financial aid form with the income tax from, let's say, when they were employed.
Correct.
And so they'll get the information back, and then they have to go back to their college or university and request that special circumstance.
Yes, ma'am, because if they have a pretty good income for the previous year, that EFC number is going to be higher than what it actually realistically would be for the 2012 year. So like I said, they really need to follow up with the school that they're going to attend to.
Okay.
Question from Harlandale High School real quick, please. Hello?
Yes.
Question?
The question is, what about for families that were employed a few months out of the year and then they lost their jobs and then they go on unemployment? How is unemployment factored into the FAFSA?
Good question.
Okay, so let's repeat that question in case some folks didn't hear it. So the question is, if someone was employed temporarily throughout the year, they were just employed a few months, and then they go on unemployment, how does unemployment income affect financial aid? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The unemployment part would be probably put where the untaxed income is because that's what they're getting as supplemental help. That would be a special circumstance because you said the family was working for part of the year, they lose their job, they do have unemployment eligibility, so maybe the numbers add up like if they were really working throughout the whole year. That would not be, of course, a realistic situation the following year because at some point you've stopped being eligible for unemployment. So that is another special circumstance where the student would have to take that up with the school because the school needs to make sure that they account that this number is really not going to be the same again because they're not going to receive unemployment for the rest of the year as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Here is how statuses are determined for independent and dependent students. In order to be an independent student for the upcoming 2012-2013 year, they need to be born before January 1st of 1988. They need to be married, have earned a bachelor's degree, have currently served or currently serving or have served as a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, have children of their own who are dependents who live with them that they will support at least 51% or more in the 2012-2013 year. This applies also, real quick side segment, if the student is pregnant and the child is not born yet but will be born during the 2012-2013 year, they can account for that child, because that way it'll account for their independency status, because that will be the point later on. So keep that one in mind as well. Also, there's three other requirements that they can qualify for: if they're an emancipated minor determined by a court, or become legal guardianship determined by a court, or unaccompanied youth who was homeless. That last part is verified mostly by high school counselors, who can verify that the student, provide documentation that the student actually lived under these circumstances. For those last three parts right there, documentation is required at UTSA. I would imagine Alamo colleges is the same. For, you know, you need legal documents, everything stating that that is actually truly the situation. Okay. If they are independent, if the student answered no to all of the questions, then the student is dependent. This is regardless if the student is self-supporting or the parents refuse to contribute to their education. Also, students who say no to all these questions must fill out a FAFSA, including their parental information and outcome and income. We have a lot of students who say, well, I live separately in my own apartment, my parents do not help me to pay for my bills or anything. Unfortunately, because they didn't meet the criteria of the other preceding questions, they are still considered a dependent student. Now, this is this last point that says on the slide right here: students with extenuating family circumstances, such as abuse or non-existent relationship, can file a request for independency status through their college or institution. With us, they really need to have real good proof that supporting documentation that this is really the case, that they've had such a hardship, you know, growing up, that things are so, they're in a really bad place that they really need to be considered independent. It's up to each individual institution to review each request to determine whether or not that's the reality of it.
And to touch on that point, Alfredo, I know that there have been situations, and maybe you all have had similar situations, where there is that strained relationship and the students can't get income tax information from their parents. The parents refuse to give them that. Have you all had that? Have you seen that? And so is that when the student would then do that extenuating circumstance if they refuse to give them that information?
Yes. Yes and no. Yes, if the situation is that bad that they cannot even, they don't say they have no contact with their parents and they're better off for it, then yes, that would be the case. However, there are situations where the parents are just adamant about not releasing their own tax information. At UTSA, we have a document that says that the student can take to their parent. The parent can sign off of it saying, I do not wish to turn in any tax information to you guys, so I'm signing that off. Then they're eligible to qualify for a little bit more in student loans, but that is it as far as UTSA goes.
So that really doesn't help them. They're going to get more loans. So
yeah,
they really need to try to get those forms.
It's really up to the high school counselors to help these kids out as much as possible to get that documentation. Yes, sir.
Other than that, what would be other examples of documentation that students can bring to fulfill that? What because you say, you know, they need to prove it.
Okay, we've had situations where they've been really, really bad. Like say a student was being abused sexually and stuff. There have been police reports, medical reports.
So it'd be documents.
It needs to come from outside sources that have legitimate proof that this situation is really bad, and here's me backing that up. And so that will greatly assist the student in being able to convince us that yes, this is the situation. You need to be independent. So things of that nature.
We also at Vail colleges will take letters from their high school counselors on the behalf of the student. If they know the circumstances and have been dealing with the student on a one-on-one basis, we do.
High school counselors are the biggest help for these kids because they're the ones that are in constant contact with them on a daily basis, and they really know what's going on with them. Okay?
Do the universities have a McKinney-Vento for those students that go on to college?
What is that?
Homeless information on homeless.
Do they have that for their undergraduate students? McKinney-Vento, a program for undergraduate students who go on to college and then that relationship with parents are broken off. Do they have a McKinney-Vento program?
McKinney-Vento program. I do know that as colleges and universities have begun doing more work with foster youth and now homeless, Chris Goldsberry, for example, is doing at our school, and I know Alamo College is doing some work with foster youth. But as we've started looking at more independent students, Chris Goldsberry has been doing quite a bit of work with our homeless population at UTSA. I'm not very familiar with the McKinney-Vento, but we can get you some information from Chris Goldsberry at UTSA, who may be more familiar with that.
If you can write down his email address, he'd be a great point of contact because he's the one that really works with everybody. His email address is his first name, Christopher, and then period.
Yeah. And that's CHRISTOPHER.
Period. Goldsberry, GOLDSBERRY at utsa.edu, and he will more than be happy to answer any of those in-depth questions as far as this situation goes, because that's his specialty, that's his passion, that's who he champions for. So he's a great guy in our department to reach out to.
I'm sorry, I still have another question. Regarding like financial aid and stuff for the FAFSA, we have a lot of students who live with mom and don't talk with dad, and so how does that go in as far as like separated families, and then also just looking at this is a two-part question. Say mom lives with with the stepdad in the picture. Technically, that stepdad's information shouldn't be included in the information for like the child that's not their kid. So how does that go in as far as like financial aid information and all those other pieces? Because legally they're not required to pay for them, but if they file together, that can be a problem. So how do students work out that?
The first part was like if the child lives with mom and has no contact with dad, only mom's tax information is provided. Vice versa, if the child lives with dad and not contact with mom, that's the way it would work. Secondly, if there's a step-parent involved and they're actually legally married and they file jointly, that information has to be provided and it is accounted for. So because they're living under the household, they're legally married and they file jointly. Now, if mom lives at home, child lives with mom has boyfriend living there with them. They're not legally married, they're nothing, but yet he contributes. It's still mom's only income because she's not legally married to this person.
I understand that, but legally, as far as like the courts are concerned and things like that, that step parent is not required to put their financial information out there. So in other words, in order for them to kind of be in a better situation, they're going to have to file separately as far as like trying to just look at those pieces, because basically what you're doing then is having the whole household pay for contribute towards that child's education, and some step parents may not be in that position where they want to kind of do that.
It could be touchy.
And it's a touchy legal situation.
Yeah, it's a really touchy situation, but that's what they got into. They have to accept that as when they're getting married, that the federal guidelines stipulate if you are married, you file jointly, both incomes count towards determining that EFC, regardless of what personal feelings that step parent may or may not have.
Yeah, so the guidelines are if they're filing jointly, then
it's all considered.
Even if they're not.
Even
It's basically household income is what's being looked at. Household income is what's being looked at. So that's, regardless of circumstances, they would have to put it in. Because the stepfather is part of that household and he would be counted as part of the household figures.
All right, and we're going to move through the rest of this.
Yes.
There's some great questions coming in, but I want to let you finish this, and then we want to bring up the folks from St. Philip's as well. So, but if you have questions, please continue to ask. We're just going to move through.
If you're whether you're dependent or independent, your PIN will be used to be your electronic signature. So keep that in mind. Every year you will use that same PIN number. Expected family contribution determines the family's ability to contribute towards the education. It determines whether they're eligible for a Pell Grant or other grants and what their loan eligibility may or may not be. The student aid report that is generated from the FAFSA will be sent to the student, and also any schools that are listed on that FAFSA. They can place up to, I believe, 10 schools on each application they can be sent to.
And the student aid report is commonly called SAR by colleges and universities.
Yes, or if you're in the IT department, they're called an ISER, Institutional Student Record. But yeah, cost of attendance can be like this one is the basic one for UTSA, but it varies across the board for any colleges and stuff. The first two tuition fees and book, well, actually just the first one. Tuition fees are the only thing that's non-negotiable in this case because that is what it costs to actually attend classes. But for any university, any college, all those other things are negotiable based on how the student lives, whether or not they bought their books, rented their books, bought them offline, whether they live at home or not, what kind of transportation they use, public, their own, do they live in town, out of town, do they have to travel? And then lastly, personal miscellaneous expenses. I always tell the students that are attending, I'm like, you're going to be a student, live like a student, make sure you budget accordingly. So any of those things that fall under tuition fees are negotiable, but this is just the standard that we use at UTSA. After they submit the FAFSA, the student's GFC is subtracted to the estimated cost of attendance. That's how we figure out how much financial aid they have need. In this case, if they have a $21,000 cost of attendance and they have a really low income that generated a zero EFC, that means that their unmet financial aid is the entire $21,721. The school will notify the student of the financial aid package by sending them an award letter, and they could or may not be selected for verification, as I mentioned before. And student must complete additional requirements for each award type depending what documentation is required of them. UTSA Access is a program that started not too long ago, about in the year 2007. It's a great program that all Texas public universities have, where it's available to a first-time freshman who is Texas residents and whose annual family income and wages are $30,000 or less, and any assets that they have must be worth less than $50,000. If they meet that criteria, they are guaranteed grants and/or scholarships to cover tuition mandatory fees for 4 years, provided that they do the following: that they complete the FAFSA and be admitted to UTSA by the March 15th priority deadline. And during the time that they are at school, they must complete at least 24 credit hours per academic year, at least 12 in the fall, 12 in the spring, and they must maintain a 2.0 cumulative GPA. Now, if they meet this criteria, they can qualify for this program, which is great. The only thing that the problem with this criteria is that if they complete 24 credit hours per year, that means that they're not going to finish in 4 years. So that means that they need to at least try to get 30 credit hours per year in order to stay in this program. And it's great because it covers tuition and fees. That's about it. We're not, with the budget hits that we took, we can't really offer more than that, but at least it pays for them to go to school. And it's up to them to come up with the rest, like for books and things of that nature.
I do want to mention, if y'all are familiar with this type of program, I just want to briefly mention that other schools across Texas are also offering similar type of programs like this. I am a little biased towards UTSA, but I just wanted to mention to all of you that to look for these types of access programs at different colleges and universities.
Yes, please find out from the school that the student is interested in, whether or not they offer it. We call it UTSA Access, but other UT schools call it a different name, but it's basically the same program. Scholarships right now, that's going to be the biggest help for these students because of all the budget crunches that we're facing. So when they're freshman students at UTSA, when they're coming in and filling out their general application at applytexas.org, as a freshman student, they're able to also at the same time fill out their scholarship application for UTSA. I'm not sure how other schools do it, but that's how we do it. Once they become sophomores, juniors, and seniors, we have them go to our own scholarships website where they fill out the application for each year after that. And those applications for HB students, which they will cover upon. Students will be, how they awarded, they have to be admitted, obviously. First come, first served basis are going to be the key. You want these students to apply as early as possible in January because there's less money to go around nowadays, so the earlier, the better for them. They must maintain satisfactory academic progress, which is what we're going to touch about right here. This is very important. In order for the students to stay under financial aid eligibility, they must maintain a 2.0 cumulative GPA during the entire time that they are a student. That's a C average. That's very doable, so we really need to push that point across the students. Secondly, they need to be able to complete at least 67% of the classes that they attempt at UTSA. Do you guys have 67%? Or what is your completion rate?
67%.
So it's the same way, okay? So that means that we don't want these students to drop. Certain circumstances will happen where they will have no choice but to drop. Always will advise students, if you need to drop, do it before the census date. Each college has their own census date. If you drop before that census date, that dropping rate does not count towards you. And was that it?
Yep.
Okay. And that's it for me. So there's our contact information. So if you can think of anything else that you didn't think of, please contact us and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, and we're going to bring you up at the end in case there are any other questions.
Okay.
But I do want to go ahead and invite our
All right.
folks from St. Philip's. Thank you, Alfredo.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. The folks from St. Philip's, if you would come on up. Oh, you're getting applause. You're getting applause out there. All right. And while I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. And yes, we're going to have Grace Zapata with St. Philip's College and Elvia Leja. Elvia, if you'd come on up here as well.
There you go.
And
it's a joint effort.
Thank you all so much for being here this morning. I wanted to have the folks also from the Alamo colleges represented because while we know that students from San Antonio are going to be going all over the country to colleges and universities, a lot of the students that you all will be serving, many of them will be staying in town, many of them starting at the Alamo colleges. And we wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the Alamo colleges as far as students that are, again, undocumented or even in a general way. And so we're going to go ahead and go through your presentation, and then there may be some questions for you as well.
Okay.
And let me go ahead and bring that up. Okay. And let me close this just a second. Okay. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Grace Zapata. I'm Associate Director at St. Philip's College. I've been there about 17 years. And this is Elvia Leja. She's a financial aid advisor at St. Philip's College, and she actually handles the HB 1403, or the undocumented students, as we refer to them. But the students that are not eligible to apply for a FAFSA, as Mr. Mercado was talking about, are the students that are considered undocumented, meaning that if they don't fall under this criteria that you see on the screen, they're not a U.S. citizen, they are not a permanent resident, and they don't have a visa, anything like that, then they have to fill out what we call the TAFSA or the FAFSA. It's a paper FAFSA. Alamo colleges actually do the paper FAFSA. We don't do the TAFSA. I'm not really that much familiar with it, but I was looking at it, and it's very similar to the FAFSA. It has the same information, same guidelines, everything else, but we ask our students to fill out the paper FAFSA. Alamo colleges will ask the students to fill out a paper FAFSA.
Okay. And for those of you that are at Harlandale and Northside, so again, I want to remind you that the PowerPoint slides are going to be available on our website. I know that some of them are kind of small for you all as you're viewing off-site, but they will be available. And so I might skip some of if we're talking about the checklist, maybe you can talk about it, because I know it's going to be challenging to read. So
yes.
For those of you that are off-site. So I did read your evaluations, so thank you so much.
On the TAFSA, like I said, the application is very, very similar to the FAFSA. The questions are basically the same. I kind of highlighted what's on there, and I know it's hard to see, but it says, you know, in order for you to fill out one of these TAFSAs, you have to be determined to have established Texas residency through your school, okay? And that's through the high school, okay? So basically when you get to the college level, if you are a Texas resident, if you have been determined to be a Texas resident, that means you're paying in-state tuition, okay? And if you're doing that, then you're able to receive Texas funds or state funds, okay? Because that's basically all that the HB 1403 students can receive, would be state funds. No federal funds are awarded to these students, okay?
Okay. And so, again, we have the form here, and I know it covers the household information.
It covers the household information, basically like the FAFSA. The same rules and regulations are required. All household members need to be listed on there. Mother, father, stepfathers, you know, stepmothers, you know, siblings, everybody that's in that household that, whether or not they are going to college or not, okay? All income has to be reported, just like on the FAFSA, same information, okay? And the only thing here I don't know if you can, move up on that, is that they do have a question on there that if the household income is less than 6,500, they do have to write a written explanation as to how they are able to support and, live on less than that, because that's below the poverty level or at the poverty level. Okay, so they would have to write some kind of written documentation on that.
And do you all assist with that at all, or I mean, do you all have, or I guess the counselors could assist if necessary?
The counselors can assist with that. The students can come to the colleges, and we can sit down with them and help them fill that out, along with the parents, because a lot of this is going to be parental information. Most of the students that we see are dependent students coming straight out of high school, so a lot of them are not independent.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, one of the things that you may be familiar with, those of you that have been working with students at the high schools for quite a while, that the Alamo colleges last year and perhaps in years past, for students that were not filling out the TASFA, who did not have a social security number, there were different forms perhaps for different colleges. Did you all find that in the past? Well, this year there's going to be a change that's going to be happening for students that do not have a social security number or undocumented. And would you all tell us a little bit about that change?
Well, right now what we require is that they fill out the paper FAFSA, but not only that, they go to the college board and actually put in the information. So they're actually entering the information that they're filling out on the FAFSA, and they go to the college boards, they put on all that information, and then at the end, it's kind of like a FAFSA, like submitting a FAFSA, but they're getting the family contribution at the end. They actually will know at the end of putting that information in what their family contribution is going to be. We ask them to submit all of that documentation to us. This is what we do right now, okay? For the upcoming year, we're just going to have them fill out the paper FAFSA and probably not do the college board. And but that is
that's still being worked out.
We're still being worked out. But by February we should know that for sure.
But we did want to give you that cutting edge information that this year the Alamo colleges all will be using the paper FAFSA for undocumented students.